This is the National Zoological Gardens of South Africa, or as it's more commonly called, the Pretoria Zoo. Or at least it's the height map of Pretoria Zoo imported into Planet Zoo. Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'll be showing you how you can get IRL height maps and import them into the game for your recreations or just terrain needs in case you wanna, I don't know, have some realistic terrain in your zoo. Yeah, so right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you that this tutorial isn't exactly perfect. The method I used to get the height maps, you can see it does leave it the map a bit, squared. So you're gonna have to come in and smoothen it out as you build along, plant your trees and build your buildings. You can smooth it out as you go along, but it does give a nice baseline to build your recreations on. Now I also want to say this isn't the only method to import the height maps into the game. There are other ways to do it. There are sites such as Tangram's Height Mapper, which has a height index of the entire world. And then there's also Terrain Party, although Terrain Party is kind of limited in that it's only the US or North America, I should say, like this part of the world. And even when I do try and get heights from here, it doesn't really work for me. So I don't know, maybe you can fiddle around with them, but I'm going to show you the method I've found that works for me. And I would recommend, looking around for the area that you want to build, because maybe you can find an actual good height map and it might give you a more detailed, maybe the terrain will be more smooth than what you see here. But yeah, especially if you live in North America, because like I said, you have the USGS and they have like quite a detailed collection of data sets on various things, including terrain, you can see here. So the method I'm going to show you today uses the website cs.heightmap.skydoc.pl. As you can see up here, it was meant for city skylines, but we can utilize it in Planet Zoo. And then you are going to need some photo editing software, image editing software, and I'm going to show you how to do it in Photoshop and then as well as paint.net, because Photoshop costs money and maybe you don't have it, so paint.net is a nice free alternative. But anyway, the first few steps both programs are going to use, and afterwards it's a similar process between each program, but I want to run through them. Photoshop does give a nicer result, but like I said, if you don't have it, then paint.net kind of works, but I prefer Photoshop as well. So anyway, in the this height map SkyDoc thing, you're going to want to find the location you want to build. So I'm going to choose the National Zoological Gardens of South Africa, since I've already done the height map of that and I know how it works. So you can just click on that eye in the corner that was right here and then type in your location. So Pretoria Zoo, there we go. Then we'll zoom in on the location you want. Okay, it's supposed to. For some reason it took me to Congo. Yeah, so the search option is a bit weird. When you type in and search a location, it might teleport you to a random spot, but the actual grid itself is gone, goes to your location. So like I said, National Zoological Gardens of Africa, the grid went over here, but I got teleported to Botswana and Zimbabwe and a whole bunch of weird places. But yeah, so it's a good idea to know where your place is on the map. But anyway, this is the grid the website gives you. It's like the total size of this thing is 17.28 kilometers, while the actual Planet Zoo in-game map is about 988 by 988 kilometers. So this is a lot bigger. That's why we need the photo editing tools to cut this down. So what you want to do is take this middle square and put it over your area. So this over here is the Pretoria Zoo. That's what I'm going to do. Then what you want to do is get the base level. So this gets the base height of the area you're working with. Every area will have a different base height. And that's already done. Then you have the height scale. So you can click on this calculate button and it kind of gets a height scale, but this doesn't always work. So you're going to want to try like a few different things. I think 250 is a good place to start. And if it's a fairly flat place, you might want to go lower than this or just slightly higher. But if it's a hilly area, so like Pretoria Zoo, I know that 550 is the exact measurement that gives me the accurate height. To determine the accurate height, I recommend going to Google Earth and kind of knowing the at least two different height spots so you can compare them. So the final map will have like this street over here, and if you look in the bottom here, you have the elevation. So I know this street is like uh, 1,306 meters above sea level, and then if we come to the top of the zoo over here, like one of the highest points, that's about 1,354. So 54 minus 6 is about 49 meters in elevation total. So just want to keep that in mind so you know what your actual elevation will be. It does need a bit of tweaking and messing around with. You're probably going to create quite a few of these different maps to make sure which one is right. I'm not sure if there's a way to get it accurate first time, but yeah. I mean, I think it beats doing the terrain by hand, but yeah. It's a little bit complex, but not too. So yeah, we got our main grid covering the zoo. Then what you want to do is make sure this draw grid option is on. Then you can download the PNG height map. That's done. There, it's done. So height map 3, because I already downloaded a few before. If we click on that, you can see this is our height map. So the central square over here, that is this over here. Cool. So as I said before, we're going to want to use some sort of photo editing software. So either use Photoshop or Paint.net. But before we jump into either of them, because I assume you're going to use the timestamps to go to the section you prefer, we just want to snip this little central square because we're going to kind of use this map as well. So use the snipping tool or Windows Shift S tool. This one's a lot more handy. And just snapshot the middle picture here because we're going to use that. So yeah, like I said before, you're going to need a few different height maps. I'm just going to do 2 to give an example. But yeah, so I'll show you. I can show you the difference as well. So I'll use the 251 it recommended, and then the 551 I know that actually works. So yeah, so I just moved my 2 downloaded height maps onto my desktop here. So height map 4 is the 250, height map 3 is the 550, and so I'm going to start off with Paint.net, and then later in the video I'll go through Photoshop. You can just choose to watch whichever section you want. Maybe you can watch both if you really want to. So open with Paint.net, and yeah. So first of all, what you want to do is select the middle square because that's where the zoo is. Be weird to select another square, and yeah, just a little bit tricky to get between the borders. I mean, this won't be. I'm trying to get it as close to 1-to-1 as possible, but it's not exact because I'm not sure how much of the borders counts for this area. I believe each of these little rectangles is just under 2 kilometers. Not exactly 2 kilometers, but yeah. So you can just copy that. I recommend don't close this file just yet. Add a new layer and just make a random square. And that way later when we come back and add other maps, we can just easily select this middle square. So if say I wanted to take my put my height map 3 in here, I just drag it in there, add a layer, and I want to select the middle, I can just easy come magic tool, select the middle square, and then have the middle square selected for both of them. Yeah, so file new, and there we go, that's our new square. Now coming back to our little snipped part of the map here, I just want to copy that to clipboard and then create a new file for it, because this little map thing will help guide us to select the exact area. Because like I said, this is about 2 by 2 kilometers, a little bit smaller, and the in-game map is even smaller than this, so we're gonna want to make sure we get the proper area. And to do that, I'm just gonna go and select the area of this map that's part of this grid. As you can see, there's some borders there. Just want to select from there, border to border. I believe that's a perfect square. You want to make sure you get a perfect square. Nope, I selected one extra row of pixels, so I guess I'm being a little bit picky, but it's not a big deal. Get 424 by 424. It will differ in size depending how big of a snippet you take, so don't worry if it's not 424 by 424, it might be 300s or 500s even. And yeah, what you want to do then with this image to get it in scale with that one is image resize 424, and then this will be 424 as well. And yeah, then I can control C this, add a new layer, paste it on top. So now they're kind of linked up to each other. I'm going to put the background layer on top because now what I want to do is I only want a quarter of this because that's what will fit in our Planet Zoo map. What we're going to do is, because paint.net is weird, you can't move two layers around at the same time. I'm going to click on layers, rotate/zoom, then we're going to use the pan tool. So I'm going to move this a bit to the side. There we go, because I want the area I'm in at this top quadrat, yeah, the top left corner. Then we'll move it up a little bit. Let's move it back down a wee bit. There we go. And that's pretty much the entirety of the zoo. So yeah, then once you click on layer 2, I'm going to click on image and sorry, not image, layers, rotate/zoom, and it will automatically have the settings from the pan. Click OK, and boom, they're both there. Yeah, so the reason I want this background map is just so I can make sure I know where my zoo is, because based on this black and white image, I don't really know where anything is. But this helps a bit. Okay, so now that we got our map in position, we want to get the scaling right. So this entire square is 1.9 by 1.9 kilometers. And then the map we can import into Planet Zoo is 948 by 948 meters. The actual map is a bit bigger, but for some reason the edges get a bit clipped out. So yeah, the actual size you can import is 948 by 948. So to properly resize that, I'm going to go canvas size, and then make sure you put your anchor on the top left, because that's where our zoo is, or whatever terrain you want to do. I think it's best to do percentage. If you do by absolute size, you can probably get the actual area, you know, if you divide 1920 by 948. But by percentage is probably easier. So it's roughly 37%, but you can't put decimals for the percentage, so either say 49 or 50. I think 50 is easiest. If you're really fussed about getting your map scale to 1:1, you can mess around with the scaling and the pixel measurements and that, but otherwise this gives a good approximation. As you can see, this is our zoo. This is what's going to be imported into the game. This is roughly the in-game map size. So obviously we don't care about the background anymore. I would recommend keeping the background so you can you can later put actual maps and that over it, and you know where to build stuff if you're doing a recreation, that is. But yeah, so now layer 2, this is what we're interested in. So before we get in that, you wanted to go to your provided height maps, and that's available in the Planet Zoo folder. So if you go into your Steam apps, Common, Planet Zoo, it's the similar space where you can install your mods, where you find the soundtrack and that, if you have the deluxe version, of course. But you're going to provided height maps, and then the game has it gives you a couple height maps. So you can just open one. I'm just going to click on the first one here, paint.net, and yeah, so just so we know the area you can work with, because this black border doesn't get translated into the in-game, it's just this middle section. So yeah, just if you wanna, so just so you can remind yourself how big this is, I'm just gonna select the entire area, copy it, file new. Now I know that this area is 962 by 962, because if you didn't know that when you make a new file in Paint and Photoshop, it takes, if you have an image in your clipboard, it will scale it to that image. So now what I want to do is image, resize this, of course, to 962 by 962. That is what the size was, right? Yep, 962. That's, you can double check that way. And Control A, so the entire thing is selected. Control C, so you can copy that. And whoops, yeah, make sure you have the right layer. So, and boom, then you just have to put this in the center. Make sure that it's nicely on these lines. I'm just going to check here. Yep. And boom, that's your height map. Easy as that. And then you can do a file, save as, and since you already used the example TIFF, it will be fine. So I'm just going to go and call this Pretoria Zoo version 1. But like I said before, this height map's probably not going to work. This is the 251. You're going to want to try and do several different height maps, because a few of them won't have the actual heights. So that's why we come back to this one. So this over here is the 551, I believe. Again, you're going to have to, it's likely you're going to need more than 2 attempts. I recommend doing the 251, then seeing if the mountains in your zoo are a lot higher than they are in real life, then you want to go less. And if the mountains or the hills or terrain shifts are a lot lower than in real life, then you want to go higher. So yeah, here 550, but just keep in mind you might not have to go that high. I'll show you an example of later where I went a lot higher than you had to. So to do this, as we went back earlier, we have the height map, and that's why I created this little black square. So magic wand, you can easily click on that black square and it's selected again. Just saves a little bit more time. I can just go and click on the height map background, Control C that. Okay, and afterwards, I believe we don't really need to do the same process with the background again, since we already put the things, the exact pan measurements in this little section. So what you want to do is just make sure you get it to the right size, in which case we're going to go back to this map over here. I'm going to copy this so I just remember how big it is. 424 by 424. Copy this, file, new, paste, then image, resize, 424 by 424. It automatically does the height. And then layers, rotate, zoom. All the panning's already in there. Beautiful. Then we just have to go image, canvas size, by percentage. I believe we did 50%. And yeah, this is the map again. And we just gotta upscale this to fit this little square. So that's 962 if I recall. So image, resize, 962. And yeah, so it isn't so hard doing the other ones once you do the first one. At least once you get used to it a little bit. And we're just going to paste this in here. And make sure it's lined up. In Photoshop you have those nice little magnet tools, not so much in Paint. And yeah, I think that's it. And we can go File, Save As, Pretoria Zoo v2.tiff. And you gotta make sure you save it as the .tiff, because that's how it reads it. And make sure you don't change the size of this entire canvas, because it has to be the specific size. Right, so if we come back into the game itself, I'm gonna click Sandbox. I believe you can do this in franchise and challenge mode as well. Actually, let's do it on challenge mode just to see. Create a new map, and then change your difficulty to whatever you want. And then when you click on terrain type, this is where you get it. So Planet Zoo version 1, that's the first one we made, with the 257 sensitivity. This is the version 2 with the sensitivity. And like I said, do it franchise mode, challenge, and sandbox. So I'm just going to do sandbox because I don't know what happens when you open challenge mode. I haven't done it before. So let's open the V1 first. I'll just rename this to Pretoria V1. Create zoo. It doesn't take long for my computer to do, although I have a fairly good PC. I'd like to think that. I've heard other people says it takes a few minutes, so this entire overall process might take a while if you do have a slower PC, like a little tortoise friend over here. Oh, and keep in mind sometimes this does crash. I'm not sure why. Sometimes when I'm loading these custom maps or when I'm creating the maps, it crashes. But yeah, this is the zoo. So one disadvantage of using the paint.net version is that it comes with this weird terrain. The terrain is very weird. It does a strange things, but you can easily come in with the smooth tool and just, smooth it out over time. But yeah, Photoshop, it's a lot smoother. I'm not sure why paint.net does this, but it does. And yeah, as you can see, I showed you the Pretoria Zoo map earlier, and the mountains were, the little hill there was a lot higher than this. This is very flat for the actual zoo. So if I go back to the main menu and load the second TIFF, the version 2 we made using the 550, it should give us a more accurate result. So same process again. Sandbox, new zoo, grassland Africa, version 2, Pretoria V2, and just wait for it to load. As you can see, once it's loaded in, ooh, it's starting to rain. Yep, thank you game. Yeah, the mountains are a lot nicer, so you're gonna have to mess around with height levels. It does, I've noticed it varies depending on the type of area, but this is a lot more like Pretoria Zoo. Again, these things are very weird. It's a consequence of using paint.net, but I mean paint.net is free. You can go and download it and use that. If you're comfortable using other photo editing software, then just, yeah, by all means use that, because they'll probably work as well. I'm just using two very common photo editing softwares. And just a big trick for once you want to come in and smooth this out, I'm using the free build mod, I think it's called. So it makes paths very nice, but also terrain. You get this massive 60 sized brushes. I wouldn't up this to 200 when you do when you do smoothing out, because it comes up with even weirder artifacts. So just keep it at like 100, and you can just smooth it out like that. But as we saw earlier at the beginning, that map I showed you, that was Photoshop, and it's a bit smoother. And I'm going to show you how to create maps like this in Photoshop right about now. Right, so for Photoshop, very similar procedure. It's just a bit more smoother, and the result comes out a lot nicer. So that's what I did. You just want to open your app the map in Photoshop, and once we're in Photoshop, you just want to select the middle rectangle. So I'm just going to come in and try and get this. Boom. No, wait, I think I missed a row at the bottom. Yeah, it's a little bit harder to see in Photoshop, actually, see where these borders start and end, because they're grey. But yeah, I believe that is the entire area. So, like in paint.net, I'm just going to create an extra layer and fill that in with a random color, just so it's easier to select when we're doing the future maps, because you're going to have to do this a few times to get the height levels right. So, new, and yeah, this is the little area that we selected from this little height map thing, this little rectangle. That's it over there. But of course, this rectangle is about 1.92 by 1.92 kilometers, and the height maps we can import in the game is 948 by 948. I know the actual Planet Zoo maps is a bit bigger, but yeah, the edges don't a bit of the edges don't come through, so that's why we're going 948 by 948. And so yeah, remember earlier I told you to take a screenshot of your little square. So you're just going to copy that, file, new, paste that in, and then we're going to do a similar thing like we did with the map right now. Get a square of the selected area, and this is just so you can position it nicely, and it's also nice for your recreation, so you know where everything is. So I'm just going to come in here, select a square. You want to make sure it's an exact square, so don't select an extra or one less row of pixels. Fortunately with Photoshop they show you the pixel measurements right there next to my cursor, so 424 by 424. Don't worry, the square might be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. It depends on how big of a you used in your snipping tool thing. So file, new, we can just get that thing, copy paste it. Now what you're going to want to do is take this little section. I didn't have to make this entire new document. I could just straight up copy from here, paste into there, and we're going to upscale it. Fortunately Photoshop is a little bit nicer in that we can do something like that. So we want this in scale of the actual map. If I've done my maths right, 1920 divided by 948 is 2.025. So we're going to want the canvas size, which is 424. Again, this might be different, and then you're going to divide it by 2.025, or I don't know, depending how accurate you want it. And that calculation gives me a rough value of 209. So it's just under half the size of the map, because yeah, it's not exactly half. Unfortunately the numbers aren't that nice to work with. I suppose when you copy this map you can up this to 8 kilometers, so it can be a little bit 18 kilometers, but it can be a bit easier to do, but I like to keep it as small as possible. So but yeah, that's up to you. Actually might be worth it going 18, because it'll be a bit easier to do the calculations. But yeah, the numbers I'm telling you now is suited for the smallest possible size, 17.28. Yeah, so 209 by 209 in this case. Again, that number might be smaller or larger depending on how big your snippet is. And yeah, so the nice thing about Photoshop is that you can move two layers at once, and that's why you want this little snipped layer, so you can see where your zoo is on this map. Like if I just use this black and white layer, I don't know where anything is here. I know there's a bit of a hill here, but otherwise it's hard to see. And then also later when you're doing your recreation itself, you can use this map overlay over the map you make in game, and yeah, build stuff 1-to-1 scale if you wish. Anyway, I'm just going to position this. This kind of seems nice. We've got the road in the front there, the hill in the back, and yeah. So then what we're going to want to do is just take this. You obviously want to scale it up and match it to the provided height maps. So yeah, if you go into your Steam apps, in your Steam folder, the common Planet Zoo provided height maps, so this is where your soundtrack is. If you have the deluxe version, and then also the Windows 64, that's where you install the mods. You just go in here and you can open open that with Photoshop. I'm just going to open the example one. And yeah, you're going to want to scale this up to fit this little thing. Easy way to do that is I'm just going to say controls. I'm just going to, click there. Click the black border. Control Shift I, that inverts the selection. New layer. Create just a blank white layer. Then I can easily upscale this little one, because Photoshop has this nice little magnetic snap tool, and boom, and that is our TIFF. That is the file itself. You're just going to want to flatten that, save as, I'll save it as Pretoria Zoo v3. These ones are from the paint.net in case you skipped forward. And yeah, but like I said earlier, you're gonna have to try a few attempts, so I recommend keeping all of this open. Don't close it right away, because you're gonna have to do it again. So yeah, if we go back to our first height map, what I'm gonna do is just drag the other height map I made into Photoshop. So this is the 551, and place that. And the reason why I made this layer, so I can just easily come in, boop, it's all selected, yay. And I can just click on height map 3, copy it, go into this over here. This is the one we made earlier with the layer. As you can see, the map over here. And you're just gonna upscale this, and again, snap tool comes in so handy because it will just snap to the overall size of the other ones, so you don't have to do that whole scaling process again. There, it's already where you want it, with the position you want it in. So useful. Copy that, come in here, I'm gonna undo my flatten image, paste that in there, scale it up, boom, we have our second tip. So again, you're gonna probably have to do it more than 2 times to make sure you get the right size, the proper, sorry, not size, the proper height mapping, because it differs based on the landscape. I noticed more flatter uses a less height intensity, whereas more rugged areas you need something more like this. So yeah, you can just flatten this again, save as, let's save it as V4 this time, and boom. So yeah, it's easy to do the second ones once you've done the first thing. So let's go and open our 2 tips that we just made in Planet Zoo to show that it works, because they should automatically save into your provided height maps folder if you open this example 1. Otherwise you're gonna have to put them in there, but that's not too complicated, not too hard. Right, so to load these in, you're gonna wanna either go your challenge, your franchise, or your sandbox mode. The way to make new maps works in each 3 of these game modes. I'm gonna go sandbox because, you know, it's the most free. And create a new grassland African map. Then you're gonna want to go on terrain type, and yeah, here you will see our TIFFs that we made, a little height map. So let's do version 3 first. I'll just call this Victoria V3, and we create the zoo. Again, this can take a while depending on your computer. Mine, it takes like a minute or so. I've heard other people it takes 4 to 5 minutes, so this entire process can be a bit drawn out. But I think it beats having to make an entire terrain map. And also just keep in mind, sometimes the game freaks out when creating these maps and it might just crash. Most of the time it does. I think, like, I don't know, my experience, like 70% of the time it's okay, but 30% it does crash. But yeah, once you do get it to run, it's great. As you can see, this is very different than the map I showed you at the beginning of the video. If we compare it to Google Earth, as we go here, you can see that this hill in the back is a lot more steeper than what came out. And that's again why I say you have to play with the height levels. Like, I know, it's supposed to be 49 meters difference between here and there, and it's not that high. So that's why I made the other height map. So if we go back to the main menu, and we create a new map with the version 4 of our height map, then we will see that the game decides to start raining as soon as we open the map, but that the heights is a lot more reasonable, a lot more realistic. This probably isn't exact, and it's probably really hard to get the heights exact. Even some of the other dimensions, the length and the width, might not be exactly 1-to-1, but it'll help you get really close and help you do your recreations. And also, if you don't really care about getting 1-to-1, then yeah, it helps you get some more naturalistic terrain. Although, as I said earlier, you are gonna have to smooth it out. Right now I am using the Planet Zoo, I think it's called the Free Build mod, which, yeah, your brush can be a lot bigger, so it helps with this large scale terrain stuff. Just don't up this intensity to 200, because weird stuff start to happen once you do. Keep it at the normal things. But and also, like I mentioned earlier, some of for some reason the borders on the side don't get incorporated in the height map. I'm not sure why the game does that, but yeah, you can just do that manually. You can go a little bit over the board with terrain, which is something I learned when doing this video. But yeah, that you can do manually. It's not so bad. And it's not where majority of your zoo will be. I imagine your zoo will be in the middle of this map. Also at times you might have scenarios like this where it dips down below the normal map level and you might not want that. In which case I think you're going to have to mess around with the map brightness or the whiteness levels. You might have to increase it, although that might mess up your height levels again. So that's another thing to play around with as you make these maps. And finally, just to demonstrate how height maps can change with intensity, this is something I did for like the area of the Johannesburg Zoo, and I had the intensity set up to 500. You can see here, the entire height limit is exceeded and this entire top is flat, and that's of course not how it looks like in real life, so you might want to tone it down. Yeah, but when I use an intensity of say 300 or 350, I don't remember exactly, it's a bit more realistic. It's still a little bit intense here on these hills here. These need to be a bit smoother, so actually can use a lower value there, but yeah, sometimes if you use high values it can give you problems like earlier. And also, one last thing to say is that while the game does sometimes crash when creating the maps, also when loading in the maps, it crashes. So yeah, I remember earlier I said 3070, I want to change it to like a 4060 at least. So I think probably put it on the issue tracker. I think it's because the terrain is so weird, so the game might not know what to do with it sometimes, even if the map has been already made. So if you're gonna make these maps, yeah, recommend just coming through with a quick smooth quickly. I'm not sure if that's the issue, but it could just help, because you have these weird little terrain bumps here, and it's normally not something you can actually do in the game. The game probably wouldn't know how to handle it, and yeah. But anyway, that's the tutorial. I hope you found it useful, and if you find any other more easier way to do this, then please let me know. If you find any other means to create maps, if you find more detailed maps, like I know like I said earlier, North American maps are a lot more detailed, or I expect them to be at least. And if there's any problems with what I did and there's a more simpler way, let me know and tell me in the comments, and I'll also update my description or pinned comment there so everyone else can see. But anyway, thanks for watching this tutorial. If you're new to the channel, check out the other stuff. I don't usually do tutorials, but other fun Planet Zoo content, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!